Okay, I think we are live. Let me just double check 1 second, make sure the audio is working. Make sure my chat's on. Let me just double check 1 second. All right, we're in business. So today we're going to go through a little bit different. We've been underwriting deals every single day for over a year now, and I figured let me sprinkle in some stuff because now we can start having fun, right? I've underwrote every single day for 369 days in a row, and it was time to also mix in other things because now we got to cover other topics. And as I come up with these topics, I'm just going to start sharing them with you and doing something a little different so that we can cover different things. But today's topic I want to talk about specifically is the housing choice voucher program, where there are these housing quality standards, HQS, and these are set by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is HUD, right? We go through HUD all the time. And during these inspections, if you want to know how the process works, is usually after you get a request for tenancy approval, the RTFA packet, right? You got to sign, you complete it, and then you got to schedule an inspection. You cannot place a tenant, have them move in, start collecting rent before you pass this inspection. Now, what does that inspection look like? So if I go to HUD and I can pull up the inspection checklist, this is the HUD inspection checklist. You can see that they have very standard sections, right? But they have things like, hey, in the living room, is there a living room? What's the electricity? What are the windows? What are the wall conditions, right? And they go by all these different rooms or bathrooms and make sure, like, hey, do all these areas look okay? Do they pass, right? And if not, why? So that the landlord can remedy that issue so that they can get it all fixed, so that they know that it's up to a certain standard, so that you're not being a slumlord, quote unquote, before you actually let someone move in there, right? So every single city might have a different checklist. So, for example, if I pull up the San Diego Housing Commission, right, they have that checklist that I showed you from HUD, but then they also show, like, hey, your exterior items, your street number must be present. Your fences, it got to be in good condition. Your hot water heater must have a pressure relief valve. Like certain things that are obvious, such as the roof can't be leaking. Like these are all things that you gotta have in place, right? You can't have leaks, obviously. Living room checklist. So every single housing authority will have a checklist that looks something like this. Maybe it's not the same format, but in general, most of the items that they care about are going to be on this checklist. So if you can look up your city or your county, public housing authority, you would typically find that these checklists are going to be in place. And you should very well go through this checklist yourself before you ever schedule an inspection. Because if you don't do that and you fail the inspection, guess what? Your home is going to be empty for another month or two. And that's a huge, huge expense. People underestimate how big of an expense vacancy is. Every empty month that you're vacant, that's a huge, huge loss to your cash flow. So don't take this lightly. Get that in place. And if you can, have your contractor walk it with the checklist in place, or maybe even have a handyman that's there during your inspection. So I want to show a few things, right? Because I had our team walk through our property. And what we did here was we just sort of went through, hey, what might the inspection or an inspector look for? I mean, this scenario is a really good example of how they want to make sure if you have these 3-prong outlets, because you have a grounding hole, that it actually gets grounded, because you don't want there to be a risk of fire in these scenarios, right? As we go and look at different areas of the property, you're going to find that, let's see, as we go on, you want to make sure that your doors open and close, your hinges are closing correctly. So make sure that if they stay shut, actually close. I mean, these are all the different items that are really, really critical for you to pass your inspection. You can't take it for granted, right? If something closes, that has to stay closed. It can't be just swinging open because the latch isn't right and stuff like that. Then we looked at the window. Did we look at the window? Let's see. Where's the window? So this is a great example. So when you lift up the window, you should lift up with ease. And when you let go of the window should stay up, just like that. right? These are things that you might take for granted, but if you fail, it's because you didn't check at these items, right? The windows should be able to lift them on their own, stay shut, lock appropriately, etc. So all these items matter. Now, let's see. What's the next thing I want to point out to you? Oh, this is a good one. So if you have any outlets that don't work, they have to be blanked over. They have to be covered like this. You can't just leave them on and whatever, because every outlet, the inspector is probably going to check to make sure that outlet is working. So that's going to be really important. As we go through and walk through their homes, obviously cleanliness is going to be an issue. Your HVAC, right? If your temperature is set to a certain temperature and your current temperature is not it, the inspector might wonder, hey, is your AC working, right? If it's 100 degrees outside and you set it to 70, you set it to 72, but it's still 90 degrees inside, that's probably going to make you fail your inspection, right? Because they might think that your HVAC isn't working. So get these things in place. Obviously, as we get to your water, they're going to turn on your hot water. They're going to make sure that the hot water is hot. It comes to temperature, not in a really, really long time. So that's going to be really important. And then as we move forward, you got to make sure you have good prep spaces in your kitchen area so that you can actually prep food. Any outlets near water sources, such as the kitchen sink, needs to be a GFCI outlet so that it's protected. But if it's not a GFCI outlet, it can sometimes be protected at the panel, but that's not necessarily the case all the time. So if you see outlets near the water areas, you want to make sure it's GFCI protected. What else might I point out? Oh, this is going to be going. Sometimes you take for granted. If you open your cabinets and they like float open, is what I would say, and they don't stay closed automatically, well, that's a fail, right? Cabinets need to be open and closed and stay closed. They can't, when you close it, they can't just like kind of leak back open, for lack of better words. Those are going to be very, very important items for you to think about. What else? Let's see. Oh, your rear entrance is going to be a good one. So when you look at your rear entrance, it obviously needs to be shut tight, able to be locked, and then it needs to be weather stripped, right? Look in your rear door to see if you can see daylight coming through, right? It should be weather stripped on the inside and the outside to make sure that air doesn't really leak out that much. So you can see why there's a little, obviously very standard. You might not ever look at it, but there should be something blocking the air on the bottom so you can keep the home insulated. Water heater, obviously you got to make sure it's up to code. In California, there needs to be earthquake restraints on it for it to be up to code. So different markets, different items. But all in all, the whole point of the exercise and this topic for this going live today is really for you to understand, one, there's a checklist that needs to be ticked off. You got to pass an inspection. If you don't pass an inspection, then that's a situation where you can run into failing your inspection. And then all of a sudden, you're at the mercy of the scheduling department to get the inspector to come back out, right? It might take you 3 weeks to schedule that inspection. And now that you fail, you got to wait another 3 weeks. Guess what? That's 2 months of holding costs that you might not have accounted for, or you didn't plan properly, so that you got to cover the utilities, insurance, the mortgage, all while you're waiting for an inspection to come in. So these are going to be really, really critical items for you to keep on top of your head, top of your mind, to reduce the risk of failing as much as possible. And sometimes going through your property with a checklist in place, or having a handyman there so that you can address any issues if there are any issues. Like, let's say the window wasn't staying open completely by itself without help, right? That stuff matters. So please, please, please make sure you go through and adjust all those items so that you can pass inspection the first time around to reduce your holding costs. And most importantly, provide a really good home for your resident. All right. I hope this was helpful. If you guys like it when we cover these different topics, please let me know. I'm going to shake things up a little bit. I'm going to do a little bit different things so that we're not always just analyzing a deal. If you guys want to analyze deals, you guys can go to the YouTube channel. Over the past 369 days that we've been looking at deals, we underwrote a deal every single day. You can just copy my homework, and if you copy my homework, we'll give you 365 plus days of content for you to show that you know what you do when it comes to analyzing deal. Obviously, it's not investment advice. We've never solicited and are not soliciting any investments on this call. We're just showing you all a little bit more about affordable housing, especially as I learn about them. I can disseminate all the information that I learned to all of you so that we can all get better together so we can all be a little bit less afraid of doing affordable housing and truly make an impact. All right. Have an amazing day, everybody. I'll see you all tomorrow for day 371. Have a good one, everybody.